They grew up like sisters, sharing food, laughter, and even dreams. But what began as friendship slowly turned into rivalry and then betrayal. When envy took root in one heart, it didn't just destroy a friendship, it shattered lives. This is the haunting story of Ada and Ngozi, two women tied by fate, torn apart by jealousy, and forever changed by the choices they made. Ada and Ngozi were born in a small town where children played barefoot in dusty streets and mothers sold food in little markets to keep families alive. They were born only months apart, and their mothers often carried them on their backs to the same gatherings. From the start, it seemed as if fate had tied their lives together. In primary school, Ada and Ngozi shared the same desk. Ada was the type who listened carefully to the teacher, writing notes neatly, her eyes always filled with curiosity. Ngozi, on the other hand, often whispered jokes to make her classmates laugh, or drew little flowers in the corners of her exercise book instead of solving her sums. Yet, they became inseparable. If Ada brought roasted groundnuts to school, she shared them with Ngozi. If Ngozi had a new pencil, Ada used it too. They held hands on their way home, their shadows stretching long in the evening sun. People in their neighborhood called them twins that came from different mothers. But even in those early years, there were differences. By the time they reached secondary school, Ada's determination became clear. She woke up before dawn to read her books, and after school, she helped her mother sell bread at the roadside. She spoke often about becoming someone important one day, someone who would change her family's story. Ngozi, however, had other dreams. She wanted an easy life. She envied the girls whose parents gave them pocket money without asking, the ones who wore new shoes and walked like queens through the dusty school compound. When Ada studied late into the night, Ngozi teased her. Ada, are you planning to marry your books?" She would laugh. Ada only smiled. "One day, these books will marry me to success." At university, the gap widened further. Ada studied business and worked small jobs on the side. She sold snacks in her hostel, managed little savings, and talked about investments even as a student. Ngozi, meanwhile, enjoyed the freedom of campus life. She attended parties, dressed beautifully, and often spoke of one dream: marrying a rich man who would take care of her forever. "Ada, you are stressing yourself too much," Ngozi would say one evening, lying lazily on her bed. "Why struggle like this when a man can just change your story overnight?" Ada shook her head with a calm smile. "Ngozi, a man can add to your story, but he should not be the whole story. Don't you see? We must build something for ourselves." Ngozi only waved her hand, laughing. "You and your serious talk. You will see, my friend. I will marry a wealthy man and live like a queen. You will be chasing coins while I enjoy life." The words were spoken in jest, but in Ngozi's heart, she truly believed them. She thought Ada was too serious, too strict with herself. Years passed, and fate revealed the fruit of their choices. Life after university became the true test of Ada and Ngozi's choices. For Ada, life was not easy in the beginning. She and Chinedu started with very little. They lived in a small one-room apartment where the paint peeled from the walls and the ceiling leaked whenever it rained. Many evenings, Ada cooked plain gari and soup with little fish, and they laughed while eating on a wooden stool instead of dining table. But Ada was never discouraged. She saw possibilities in every challenge. Where others saw lack, she saw opportunity. She encouraged Chinedu to stop waiting for a miracle job and instead join her in building something of their own. "Chinedu," she would say with her calm but firm voice, "we may not have much now, but if we put our strength together, one day we will eat with kings." Chinedu often felt tired, sometimes even lazy, but Ada pushed him gently yet firmly. If he gave up, she encouraged him. If he doubted, she reminded him of the vision. With Ada's clever mind and persistence, they began selling clothes in small quantities. At first, Ada carried the goods herself to customers. Later, when money came in, they rented a small shop. From that shop, Ada expanded to another, and soon their name was whispered in markets and offices. People began to see Ada and Chinedu as a couple blessed by fortune. But behind the doors of their success, it was Ada's sharp thinking, patience, and endless energy that kept the wheels turning. Meanwhile, in another corner of the same city, Ngozi's life told a different story. She had always believed that marriage to a rich man was the golden ticket. She wanted to wake up one day in silk sheets, with servants at her call, and a husband who showered her with expensive gifts. She waited, prayed, and dressed herself beautifully for every occasion, hoping to catch the attention of the kind of man she dreamed of. By the time Ada and Chinedu bought their first car, Ngozi was still taking crowded buses to work. By the time Ada moved into a spacious home with tiled floors and shining lights, Ngozi was still living in a small rented room, surrounded by neighbors who argued loudly at night. Her beauty, though still present, no longer held the same power it once did. Men came, but most were struggling themselves or unwilling to provide the kind of life she expected. Others enjoyed her company, but never offered commitment. Each time Ngozi visited Ada, the difference stabbed her heart like a knife. She saw Ada's sitting room with fine furniture, curtains flowing like rivers of silk, and a husband who looks at his wife with care and love. She tasted Ada's meals served on shining plates and watched her best friend laughing freely, her face glowing with happiness. And the questions began to burn in Ngozi's heart. Why is her life so sweet and mine so bitter? How can Ada, who is no better than me, be living like a queen while I suffer? Surely it must be because of her husband. Yes, Ngozi convinced herself that Chinedu was the key to Ada's success. After all, Ada was just a woman, wasn't she? How could she have built all this on her own? She remembered the Chinedu she met years ago. Quiet, gentle, easygoing. She had not known him well, but from what she saw now, he must have become powerful and rich. In Ngozi's mind, Chinedu was the foundation, the pillar, the reason Ada's life looked so beautiful. That night, Ngozi lay in her bed, tossing and turning. The noise of her neighbor's quarrel seeped through the thin walls, and the air felt heavy with frustration. She thought of Ada lying peacefully in her big bedroom, maybe with an air conditioner humming softly, her husband beside her. A sharp pang of envy stabbed Ngozi's chest. If I had a man like Chinedu, she whispered to herself, my life would be different. I would be the one living that life. Ada is just lucky. It should have been me. From that moment, envy began to grow into something darker. Ngozi was no longer just admiring Ada's life. She was starting to desire it for herself. What she didn't know was this. Ada's marriage was not perfect, and Chinedu was not the strong man she thought he was. Without Ada, the wealth she admired would not have existed. But blinded by jealousy, Ngozi could not see the truth. And so, a dangerous thought took root in her mind, a thought that would soon push her to make a choice that would change all their lives forever. Ngozi's decision was not sudden. It began with small steps, each one leading her deeper into a dangerous path. At first, she increased her visits to Ada's home. She would arrive smiling, carrying small gifts, pretending to be the loyal best friend who wanted nothing but happiness for Ada. Ada, you are truly blessed, she would say with a sweet voice, her eyes darting quickly around the shining house. I thank God for your life every day. Ada, innocent and trusting, believed her words. She had no idea that beneath the smiles, her best friend's heart was burning with jealousy. Whenever Ada went into the kitchen to prepare food, Ngozi would seize the moment to study Chinedu. She noticed how he leaned back lazily on the sofa, how he avoided long conversations, and how quickly he obeyed whenever Ada called him to help with something. To Ngozi, this looked like proof that Chinedu was the true king of the house, a man who commanded respect with just his presence. No wonder Ada is enjoying life. With a man like this, who wouldn't? So she began her plan. The first step was flattery. She made sure to praise Chinedu in ways Ada never did. Brother Chinedu, she would say, using a respectful tone, you are such a caring man. I can see why Ada is always smiling. You really know how to make a woman happy. Chinedu, who secretly enjoyed attention, would smile shyly and wave off the comment. But inside, her words made him feel important. He was used to Ada pushing him, guiding him, sometimes even scolding him when he wanted to give up. But Ngozi's soft words made him feel like a king. Next came the familiarity. Ngozi began calling him often. Sometimes she would pretend it was to ask about Ada, but the conversation always shifted. "Are you eating well?" she would ask. "I hope you are not stressing yourself too much with work," she would add. Her voice was sweet, caring, and different from Ada's firm tone. Slowly, Chinedu began to respond more warmly. Finally came the opportunity. One rainy afternoon, Ada traveled for a women's conference in another city. Ngozi knew this beforehand because Ada had mentioned it to her casually. That was the day she made her boldest move. She came to the house, pretending to check on Chinedu since Ada was away. She brought food, laughed easily, and made herself comfortable. "Ah, brother Chinedu," she teased as he sat with her. "Ada is lucky to have you. If I had a man like you, I would never let him out of my sight." Chinedu chuckled, but the seed of temptation had already been planted. Ngozi leaned closer, her words dripping with admiration. "You are strong, handsome, and successful. Honestly, Ada is enjoying. Sometimes I even envy her." Those words hit him differently. No one, not even Ada, had ever spoken to him that way. He felt admired, powerful, wanted, and in that moment of weakness, the line was crossed. Ngozi smiled to herself, certain she had won. In her mind, this was the beginning of her own victory. She believed she had captured both Chinedu's heart and the wealth she thought belonged to him. But what she didn't realize was that she was stepping into a trap of her own making. For behind the walls of that house, the gold she thought she was claiming was nothing more than shadows. And soon, she would discover the bitter truth. Ngozi and Chinedu started speaking more often on the phone. At first, it was innocent, quick greetings, short check-ins when Ada was not around. But soon, the calls stretched late into the night. Ngozi's soft words became like honey in Chinedu's ears. "Brother Chinedu," she would say sweetly, "you are such a good man. Ada doesn't always see how lucky she is to have you." Chinedu, who often felt pressured by Ada's drive and high standards, found comfort in Ngozi's flattery. Her words soothed his ego, made him feel important, unlike Ada's constant pushing. When they began to meet secretly, the bond deepened. Over shared drinks and quiet moments, Chinedu started to complain openly. "Ada doesn't respect me enough," he grumbled. "She controls everything. Even in the business, she acts as if I'm just her assistant." Ngozi nodded, pretending to understand. "You deserve better. A man like you should be celebrated, not corrected." With every secret conversation, Chinedu grew more distant from Ada. He stopped laughing with her the way he once did. He avoided her touch, came home later, and sat in silence at the dinner table. Ada felt the change like a cold wind creeping into her warm house. She asked him gently, "Chinedu, is something wrong? Are you unhappy?" But he only shrugged and turned away. The more he drew back, the more Ngozi leaned in, filling the space Ada had once occupied. Then the truth came crashing down. One evening, Ada found the messages, hidden but not carefully enough. Sweet words, secret plans, and Ngozi's name flashing across the screen. Her heart pounded as her eyes moved over the lines. It was as if her world cracked open. Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back, walking into the living room where Chinedu sat. She held up the phone, her voice trembling. "So, it's Ngozi?" Chinedu had no answer. His silence was louder than any confession. The betrayal cut Ada deeper than any wound. This was not only her husband. It was her childhood friend, her sister in all but blood. To lose both at once was unbearable. With heavy steps and a heart crushed by pain, Ada walked away from the marriage she had built with sweat and love. And there stood Ngozi, smiling faintly, believing she had finally won. She thought she had claimed Ada's crown. She thought the life of wealth and joy was now hers to enjoy. But what she didn't yet know was this. The crown she snatched was nothing but hollow metal. The true glory, the true power, had always been Ada herself. And soon, the truth would reveal itself in the ugliest way. When Ada left, Ngozi believed the gates of paradise had opened for her. She walked into the house with a sense of triumph. her heels clicking against the marble floor that Ada once decorated. She ran her fingers across the polished furniture, smiling at the thought that she was now the woman of the house. "This is mine now," she whispered to herself. "All mine." For the first few weeks, she enjoyed the surface beauty, the large bedroom, the fine clothes, the whispers from neighbors who called her madam. She wore Ada's jewelry, strutted in Ada's kitchen, and lay on Ada's bed beside Chinedu, convinced that she had finally risen above the struggles of her past. But soon, reality began to bite. The business that Ada once managed with precision started to fall apart. Orders were missed, clients complained, and without Ada's sharp mind to guide decisions, Chinedu stumbled. He tried to take charge, but his laziness and lack of vision became clear. Bills piled up on the table. The bank called. Suppliers demanded payment. Slowly, the shine of wealth began to fade. Ngozi frowned one evening as she searched the wardrobe. "Chinedu, where's the money Ada kept? Why are things running dry?" Chinedu sighed heavily, frustration etched on his face. "What money, Ngozi? Do you think I built this?" Ada was the one who ran everything. Without her, I don't even know where to start. The word struck Ngozi like a whip. She stared at him, disbelief and anger flashing in her eyes. "What do you mean? So you're telling me all this house, this wealth, was Ada's doing?" Chinedu's silence was the cruel confirmation. From that moment, her dream life began to collapse. The party stopped. The clothes lost their meaning. Even the neighbors whispered differently now, their voices laced with mockery instead of envy. She would sit alone in the vast living room at night, the silence pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. No joy, no laughter, no spark, only regret. For the first time, she realized the depth of her mistake. She had envied Ada without knowing the truth. She had betrayed a sisterly bond for a prize that never existed. The crown she wore was heavy, but empty. And Ada? Ada did not crumble. Though her heart was broken, she chose to start afresh. She leaned on her strength, rebuilt her business step by step, and her glow returned. People admired her resilience, her courage, her unstoppable spirit. Meanwhile, Ngozi withered in the shadow of her own choices. She would pass by Ada sometimes in the market, and though Ada greeted her politely, the kindness only deepened Ngozi's shame. She had taken Ada's husband, destroyed her friend's home, and yet, here she was, lonely, struggling, and hollow. In the quiet of her nights, tears rolled down her face as she whispered to herself, "If only I had been content, if only I had not let envy rule me." The victory she thought she had won turned into a curse she could not escape. And so, the story of Ngozi stood as a warning. When envy leads the way, regret will always be the destination.